host, the kindest, sweetest president anybody could ever have, Yvonne Thomas Miller.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad you could make it to our community forum. I must say, United Blind of Whatcom County, our outreach committee has been working on this for a few months now, outreaching to newspapers and radio and wherever we could put the word out. I'm very grateful for my committee who helped me with this. We have today a lineup of presenters, and I would love to take a moment to thank Julie Brannon for coming. She's our first presenter. She's president of the Washington Council of the Blind. Thank you, Julie.
I'm pleased to be here, and thank you very much for asking me. As many of you probably know, October 15th is an annual celebration of white cane, or white cane law, very important law, which was enacted in October, the same month, of course, in 1964. It was signed into law by Lyndon Johnson, and I think Andy's going to get much more into the history, but I just wanted to mention that this is an annual event, and very, very special that our Whatcom County chapter was willing and is interested in acknowledging this event. Some blindness groups do, but we've seen kind of a lot of it wane over the years, so we're just so tickled that you guys are doing this. Thank you much. For those of you who don't know, I am the president of the Washington Council of the Blind, which is the largest consumer organization of blind persons in Washington state. In fact, last count we had 440 members, so we're quite large. And we're very, very involved in advocacy work and legislative work and support. I consider us having two prongs in a sense, advocacy and support. So really tickled to be here. As far as the white cane law and what it is, in Washington state, it's under RCW 70.84.040, and RCW, of course, stands for Revised Code of Washington. What it is precautions for drivers of motor vehicles approaching wheelchair users or pedestrians who are using a white cane, a dog guide, or a service animal. And basically, the driver of a vehicle approaching a totally or partially, they say partially blind in this riding, pedestrian who is carrying a white cane, a predominantly white cane in color, with or without a red tip, or totally partially blind or hearing impaired pedestrian using a guide dog, or a person with a physical disability using a service animal, or a disability using a wheelchair or a power wheelchair as defined in an RCW. They shall take all necessary precautions to avoid injury to such pedestrian or wheelchair user. So any driver who fails to take such precaution will be liable for damages of any injuries caused the pedestrian or wheelchair user. Basically, it's a protection. And also, if you see a white cane, you're to come to a stop when you're in an intersection, etc. It's a protection that allowed independence for blind people to orient and to be mobile. The protection was really quite necessary because too many accidents before this came into being were happening since the white cane was developed in the 1930s. So that's in a nutshell, because Andy's going to go in more detail what the white cane law is, but it's a very special law for Washingtonians, of course, in this state, and it's enacted all over the country. Every state has adopted the white cane law. Very, very important. It has allowed blind and visually impaired people to go out and feel safe and travel independently. So thank you all so much for being here, and thank you, Whatcom County, for organizing this.
Thank you, Julie. We also have Andy Arvidsson. He's first Vice President of Washington Council of the Blind. I'm pleased to have him here to talk more about the white cane law and guide dogs. Andy?
Thanks, Yvonne. Well, I thought I'd give a little history about white canes to introduce this thing. White canes came from France, but they weren't white, they were black. And so in 1921, they came to the United States. And in Peoria, Illinois, there was a line member that noticed that blind people were using sticks. They were called black sticks at the time, to go across the streets, and they weren't very visible to drivers. And so he suggested that they make them white, which worked really well because then drivers could see the white cane until it snowed. And then in the snow, they weren't very visible a lot of times. So then they created the red tip. And it took from 1921 to 1931 to do that. So now we have these all folding collapsible canes. I don't know if Julie is aware of this because she used to work at the Department of Services for the Blind, but Bronson Gu designed a collapsible cane. We used to work at the Department of Services for the Blind in Seattle.
Not know that. No.
Yeah. So it's interesting that a lot of people in today's time are not aware of white canes. I use a guide dog and a white cane both, not always at the same time, but sometimes when I'm with my white cane, people have accused me of being a pole walker because everybody's walking with poles nowadays. And people have lost, a lot of America has lost the idea of what white canes are all about. And so part of the White Cane Awareness Day and Safety Day for me, and hopefully for everybody else, is try to educate the population what white canes are. White cane for me is a navigation tool. It helps me navigate my way around things. And a guide dog is like having a GPS system hooked to a white cane, because they guide you instead of you trying to follow a stick, which is really interesting. Then you go into the laws, and like Julie said, if you see a white cane, your drivers are supposed to stop. When you go out and take your driver's test and you read the driver's manual, it talks about white canes in there, but people still don't know about them. I think they just skip over that stuff because it's not important. And so the more that we can get out into the public about what white canes are and guide dogs are, the better everybody will be. Bing, bing, somebody else is here. It's a fact of knowing how to use a cane that can save your life. I remember when I first got a guide dog back in the 90s, and I was living in Seattle at the time. And I went on this normal route that I went on all the time down on First and Holgate kind of area. I had to cross a set of railroad tracks there every time I went down there. And all of a sudden my dog stopped and I couldn't figure out why. And I couldn't get my dog to go forward. And finally some guy said, if you go forward, you're going to fall in a hole. They'd dug up across the sidewalk and across the first half of the street that I was on, a big ditch alongside the railroad tracks. And I didn't know it. And if my dog hadn't had intelligent disobedience, I would have walked right into a hole in the road.
Wow.
If I'd have been using my cane, of course, I could have felt it. And so my dog had stopped just slightly short, so I couldn't touch it with my foot. So I didn't know that. And so by having white canes or guide dogs, either one, which they fall under the same laws of pedestrian safety and whatnot, as Julie mentioned, I could have fallen to my death in that hole because it was like 6 or 8 feet deep or something like that. And so I find that we talked earlier today about people look at people with white canes kind of like they feel sorry for us sometimes. And my wife explained that she's watched when I walk with a white cane, people will turn their head away so they're not looking at me. But when I walk with my guide dog, they smile and think it's great. And so I'm not, for me personally, I don't know what the difference is. I mean, I'm able-bodied with or my cane or with my dog, either one. And so I really feel odd that it's perceived that people feel sorry for blind people. Because when I use my white cane, I get around probably just as good as most sighted people. I get around with my guide dog probably just as good as most sighted people. I probably run into stuff less often than sighted people because I have the advantage of being able to feel where I'm going with the cane. I have the advantage of a dog seeing where I'm going at ground level that I may not be aware of if I had good eyesight and could see. Because if you think about it, we get complacent in life and don't always notice what's in front of us. And by tapping out a cane or walking with a guide dog, we get to notice a lot more. Julie said in 1964 that law was passed and Lyndon Baines Johnson signed a first one. The law was passed on August 6th and he signed it 9 days later, October 6th and signed it 9 days later. On October 15th is why October 15th is classified as the annual date. You know, every year since then, or almost every year since then, a president is proclaimed White Cane Awareness Day on October 15th. In 2014, Barack Obama did something different. In 2014, he called it National Blind Awareness Day. And so he kind of changed the focus a little bit, but it's still National White Cane Awareness Day, or White Cane Safety Day, depending on how they term it from one year to the next. In 2014, American Council of the Blind contacted Lions Club International and got them to change the image at Lions Club International from the white cane with the hook on it to the actual white cane, and started calling it White Cane Safety Day at Lions Club International. I'm sure that there's a Lions Club member on here besides me that will describe more about that, but American Council of Blind got in contact with them in 2014 to make the change. So I'm going to let the next person talk. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Andy. That was good. I wasn't aware of some of the things you spoke about. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now we have, I'm pleased to introduce you to Patty Allen White and Rock White. I don't know which one will speak first, but I'm so happy you're here today.
Thank you. I'm Rock White, and I'm a trustee for the Northwest Lions Foundation. And I will speak a little bit first, if that's okay, and then Patty will follow up.
That's great.
I want to thank you for inviting us to be a part of your group. I think that you do great work, and I want you to know that.
Thank you.
We were asked a little bit to talk about the when and why of White Cane Days and the Lion Site Conservation Foundation of Washington and Northern Idaho. And I wanted to thank Patty because Patty was the executive secretary for many years for the Lions, and she went back into the minutes for the different meetings and the governor's meetings and so on, and pulled a lot of history and stuff out that we're going to share with you today. So she had the expertise and the ability and the way to know where to go and get that information. So I'm just going to share some things. The idea to get multiple District 19 Lions as a group involved in a site conservation and eye donor program brought to MD19 Lions was brought by past district governor Jack Radford in July of 1965 at the Council of Governors meeting. He was a ham radio operator, and he had gotten involved with other ham radio enthusiasts in an eye donor program that was already going, and he got excited about that. Site conservation, taking care of the precious gift of sight, had become an integral part of the Lions organization ever since the famous speech delivered by Helen Keller in 1925 at the Lions International Convention in Cedar Point, Ohio. Helen Keller said, "Will you not help me hasten the day when there shall be no preventable blindness, no little deaf, blind child untaught, no blind man or woman unaided. I appeal to you, lions, you who have your sight, your hearing, you who are strong and brave and kind. Will you not constitute yourselves knights of the blind in this crusade against darkness? The minutes of that meeting reflect that even though there was no eye bank closer than San Francisco, Jack Radford did not yet see a need for creating an eye bank in Washington. He just wanted the cooperation of all Lions in this effort to help people who were blind and sight impaired. He opened the door and the Lions walked through. There was a resolution formally adopted in May of 1967 at the MD-19 annual convention in Tacoma to establish an MD-19 site conservation program. At the annual convention in May of 1968, Constitution and bylaws were presented to and accepted by the Council of Governors for the Lion Site Conservation Foundation. This greatly influenced this was greatly influenced by Iowa's Lions Site Conservation Foundation. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Patty, and she's going to share a little of the history.
Thanks, Rock, and thanks to you all for including us in your meeting. This is really interesting, and I'm honored to be a part of this. You know, in 1965 and 64, when all of this was happening with white canes, I was graduating from high school, and my dad was executive secretary at the time for the Lions, and he had discovered that he had diabetes, and 20 years later, diabetic retinopathy took his eyesight, even though he was very disciplined about diabetes. He still became sight impaired. And I remember his little white cane that, like you said, folded up, and he snapped it open, and he insisted on fixing things on the roof at our house, even when he was sight impaired. And I think that he needed a white cane up there too, to keep him from falling off. He was very insistent on his independence, and I appreciated him being able to have that white cane to help him. You know, in July of 1968, the foundation secretary for our Lions Site Conservation Foundation contacted Lions Clubs International and asked them if we could put the Lions logo on our foundation, use the logo and use the Lions name so that we could be connected with the Lions for this movement. And they gave us the okay to do that, but they asked us to put the name of Washington and Northern Idaho on our foundation's name. And because of the difference between Canada and the United States with medical issues, we were not able to make our foundation be part of or have all of our Lions involved in it. The Canadian part of our international multiple district had to have their own site foundations. So it was just always Washington and Northern Idaho that were part of this. And at that time in 1968, when they got the approval from International to use the name Lions, they met for the first time, and they prepared a budget for the new foundation and realized that they needed a way to earn money to help with the things that they wanted to do as a foundation. So they studied the operation of having a white cane day to provide those necessary funds. And this they learned from Iowa, the Iowa Lions, that this was a good way to raise funds. And so in that 1968 report to the council, it was explained that at the trustee meeting, it was decided that an area-wide white cane day, and they just thought it would be one day at the time, would become a money-raising project. It would be held April 4th through the 5th of 1969. All the Lions clubs would be encouraged to participate, and information regarding this fundraiser would come directly from the foundation. A year later, when the foundation came and made their report about the White Cane Days at the May annual convention, they reported that there were 2 projects approved at that first meeting. One was to establish an eye bank at the University of Washington Hospital, and the other was to help the piano tuning school in Vancouver, Washington. The eye bank would be called the Lions Eye Bank. To carry out the proposals or the purposes of the foundation, the trustees deemed it necessary and desirable for the Lions clubs to conduct fundraising projects, and the board approved 2 such projects. One was called PAM, which is an acronym, and Rock and I looked and couldn't find out what PAM stood for, but with this project, they asked the Lions clubs, all of the Lions clubs in Washington and Northern Idaho, to have a fundraiser and to split the profits of that fundraiser, half with the Lions Conservation Foundation and half they would keep in their local community to help with site projects. And then they also asked all the Lions to participate in White Cane Days. And the report to the MD-19 Council of Governors reflects that this very first White Cane Days effort, and these are their words, was a tremendous success. The governors of both Washington and Idaho proclaimed White Cane Days, as well as the mayors of many cities. The publicity incidental to White Cane Days was much more than expected. At least 4 television stations, numerous radio stations, and dozens of newspapers poured forth on the subject at the suggestion of hundreds of Lions members. One of the most gratifying features of the White Cane Days project is the unity of purpose created among the Lions clubs of the state of Washington and Idaho. Every geographical section of the area participated splendidly. Every Lions district in the area did its part. You know, the exact reasons why that first group of trustees decided to select April and then move the dates for White Cane Days to May will probably never be known, because our founding fathers are no longer with us, and so we can't get the answer to that question. However, in the decade of the 60s, when the idea of having a special White Cane Safety Day had just become a reality, the Lions may not have been fully aware of this October event. And having worked for the Lions for 40 plus years, I also know that planning and holding events in the fall of the year, of the Lions year, which runs from July to June, always presents a challenge, because so many of our clubs go dark or on vacation or holidays during the summer months. So it takes a while, just like the kids at school, to get back into the swing of things and support a project in September or October. So I can hear them discussing this and probably deciding that holding the White Cane Days in the spring gave this brand new fundraiser a much better chance of being a success. The leaders the leaders would have the entire Lions year to promote and plan for the event. You know, the Lions of MD-19 chose this iconic symbol, the white cane, that had been in use by blind and sight-impaired people since the early 1900s in Europe. They used it to represent their fundraising efforts. That white cane symbol tells the public that the Lions are in the business of all things dealing with sight, by helping to conserve sight, restore sight, and assist those organizations that work with people who are sight impaired and blind to lead more independent lives. And we are proud to support your efforts and proud to be part of the White Cane movement of safety and awareness. And we will work with you to continue to tell people about white canes and guide dogs. throughout the world. So thank you again for inviting us to participate and to share a little of our history.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Patty and Rock. Your presentation was so interesting. It answered a few questions in my mind. Thank you so much.
Well,
Our next speaker is Trina Wildman, who is daughter of Gloria Riley, who was a member and an active officer of our chapter. Here to share more is Trina.
Okay, well, hello, my name is Trina Wildman. I am the daughter of Gloria Riley, and we just wanted to give a little bit of information about her since she passed away on August 19th, 2021, and I'm trying to carry on some of her work that she was able to not finish. So I did an obituary, so I'm going to go off those as my notes to tell you a little bit about her. She was visually impaired all her life. And she was a cane user the last probably 15 years or so. So she had a stability cane and then she had a mobility cane. She had both, but usually the stability cane was her thing. She always struggled with her vision all her life. Even when she was a small child, she never really had 20/20 vision at all. It didn't happen for her, but she was able to keep corrective lenses as time went on. Each year would go by, the technology would get better so that they'd be able to, you know, keep her fit with glasses. And at one point she even had some contacts for a while, but had to wear glasses on top of those to make better vision. But it was nice that she could have that option to try contacts out, which is a good thing. I think it was, I'm going to say probably the mid 90s or so, her vision had gotten so bad that she lost her driver's license for several years. I think it was about 5 years, if I recall. And then she went back to the doctor to have an exam, and the doctor said, hey, you know, I think we can do something to get your vision a little bit better. She had some cataracts going on. So she agreed, and they did the surgery, and she was able to get her vision back to where she could get her driver's license. And so that was really nice because her husband at the time was having some health issues, and she was able to continue driving him. Just about the time he passed away, she lost her vision again and had to give up her license for the last time. But that was a nice blessing that she wasn't expecting. So she's always kind of improvised, adapt, and overcome through all of that. But her husband passed away in 2010. And she decided to move up a little bit closer to me. I'd been living in Vancouver, BC, Canada for about 25 years or so. And so we agreed to have her move to Bellingham. It was closer to me. I could come across the border frequently and visit, see how she's doing. So that worked out really well. And then that's where she found United Blind in Whatcom County. So she joined UBWC in 2011. And she claims that it was a whole new world opening for her through the incredible people in this small nonprofit organization. She got involved and shared experiences and soon discovered how many different ways other people just like her learn to manage their daily lives with hope, happiness, and humor. And those were her words. And I think she did a pretty great job there. It gave her a lot of inspiration to do the work that she was doing before she passed away. So from my notes here, Gloria served as a UBWC chapter treasurer for 2 years, starting in 2011. In 2014, she served for 2 years as elected president. And she also was in 2014, she became the Newsline editor for the affiliate Washington Council for the Blind. And that was in 2015. During the same year, she was asked to facilitate the visually impaired persons, or the VIP support group, at the Gibson Senior Center in Everett, Washington. That's where she started becoming a way more active in the community, which is great. And then, of course, in 2020, during our pandemic, she did rejoin UBWC and was active with them on Zoom. In fall of 2020, she was voted as second vice president until her recent passing. She also wrote an article in the Forks Forum in the community that she lived for White Cane Day. I believe she wrote that in October of 2020. If anyone is interested in receiving a copy of it, you're welcome to contact me. And I'm also now a member of the UBWC and the ACB. So anybody can reach out to me at any time, and I'm happy to give you any further information if you'd like it. So during the pandemic in 2020, the motivation for the book that she did was she went to her doctor's office one day for an appointment, and when she was getting ready to leave the office, she needed some assistance, and the medical assistant just kind of walked off and left her there. So she called her back, and she was really kind of upset. But my mom was pretty clever, and she would use opportunities like this to educate people, which I thought was pretty great of her to do. And so she says, "Do you know what this is?" and holding up her cane. And the medical assistant says, "No, I'm sorry, I don't." And so she says, "This is a white cane, and this is what it's used for." She says, "I'm visually impaired. I'm blind. I can't see, and I need your assistance. Would that be okay?" So she says, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know. Thank you for telling me." So my mom is always, thinking of ideas and stuff like this. So she decided to write a book. And it was mainly focused at caregivers, but for anybody, any adult person that's losing their vision. And so the book she ended up writing, it's called Your Amazing Itty Bitty Guide for Adult 2020 Vision Loss, 15 Key Topics for Successful Lifestyle Modifications by Gloria Riley. So this was published, and it is for sale on Amazon. It can be purchased for a paperback at $6.99. For a Kindle ebook version is $2.99. The launch date was done on October 26th. It was very successful. I'm very proud of my mom because it happened right after she passed away, and I was so busy doing things for after she passed away, I didn't know how I was going to pull it off. But with everybody's joint effort, Lions Club, UBWC, everybody that knew her all chipped in and was able to help spread the word about this book. And she was able to rank #1 bestseller in 3 ebook categories on Amazon. And on the paperback, she was ranking #4 on that day. So I'm very proud of her achievement. The publisher was so impressed with her her rankings that day that they've agreed to do the book in large print and also audio. So they are working on doing that. They're looking into it. And not only will this be for her book, but any other published authors with that publisher will have those options as well to sell their books. So that's pretty amazing what ended up coming out of all of that. So yeah, my mom was a pretty busy lady. She kept me busy too. So I'm glad that I can have a little bit of her knowledge and carry on some of her work. Not quite sure where I fit in with my skill set, but I'm going to do my best to continue her work in some fashion. So I'm looking forward to being a new member of American Council for the Blind, United Blind in Whatcom County, and Washington Council for the Blind. So
Thank you, Trina. Your mother was awesome, and we are grateful to have you as a new member. Our next speaker is Collette Arvidsson and the Knights of the Blind.
Collette Arvidsson, and I am Vice President for the Anacortes Lions Club. But in addition to that, one of the responsibilities I have is as Secretary for the MD-19 Lions Knights of the Blind. Now, that's a committee you may not have heard of before. It was endorsed by the MD-19 Lions Council of Governors in October of 2020. And the purpose of that organization is, a lot of us know as Lions that Helen Keller challenged us to be Knights of the Blind in the crusade against darkness. And if we look at the global mission of vision for Lions, it states that we're there to prevent avoidable blindness and improve the quality of life for people who are blind or visually impaired. And the Lions have done an outstanding job of preventing avoidable blindness, things like river blindness, glaucoma, the eye banks, the vision screenings to catch things so little kids don't have to go blind. So there are tremendous things, but it's that extra piece of trying to improve the quality of life for people who are blind that we found is sometimes missing, because it's really hard sometimes to find people who are blind. With confidentiality, you can't go out and say, oh, do you have any blind people we can help? So the purpose, and as the ways it's stated in the mission statement, is to accept and act upon the Helen Keller challenge made to Lions to become Knights of the Blind, which includes the improvement of the quality of life for people who are blind and visually impaired. And it's basically, we have a number of goals, and it's just to help Lions to actively interact with people who are blind in our local community, listen specifically to their needs, to partner with organizations for the blind, to increase membership of blind people in membership, make sure that things are accessible so a person who's blind can fill out an application form for the Lions, which right now isn't really possible. I know they're working on it. We've been working with the LCI to try to make that more possible, make things visible, accessible, and documentation accessible to people who are blind. And really overall to educate and raise awareness of blindness and visual impairment in our communities, because a lot of what we're trying to do is just improve access and the ability for people to just participate fully in life. Often, I think, one of the things like today, it's White Cane Day. And a lot of people, and we've heard about White Cane for Lions, often looks at the fundraiser, and it's, that money is raised to do great things in the area of vision. However, one of the things I found is that some years ago, in about 2014, the American Council of the Blind petitioned LCI to change the image of the little crooked white cane with a red tip, which currently isn't being used, hasn't been used since after World War II, when the veterans received a different type of a cane that was more effective, not just to keep them from stumbling. And when they did that, if Lions looked at the LCI webpage, if you search for white cane, you're going to find a different kind of a logo that maybe looks different for people. And I'm going to show you this and describe it so that those who can't see it know what it looks like. And basically, and they have stickers. We bought stickers for our club to be able to distribute on White Cane Day. So it's a blue circle, and in the middle of there, or toward the middle, is a real white cane, the kind with a handle on it and a straight up and down and a red tip to keep that awareness and safety. And then that's holding up a banner, and the banner has the Lions logo on one side and then the words White Cane Day. And above the words and the banner, it says Lions Support, and the words underneath, independence, mobility, and safety. Now, White Cane Day itself was created in 1964 and declared such by Lyndon Johnson and an act of Congress. And it's been known as more of that awareness and safety. I think one of the things that we're trying to do is help show the ability of blind versus the disability of the blind. Because given appropriate access tools, and there's a lot of technology, and there's just that awareness. We've talked about it in a lot of the sessions today. Just treating a person who is blind like a human being and not assuming that their spouse has to talk for them, and just giving them a chance to get access to all the different documents and information that's necessary. The Knights of the Blind have been around, like I said, just this particular organization or committee, and we have representatives throughout the multiple District 19 who work with their district governors and with the individual groups, and just trying to be there to speak to what it is to be blind. That whole idea of access, when last year's international president talked to us about inclusion and diversity. And truly, that's what we're looking for as far as Knights of the Blind. One of the things I found amazing is that the Athens, Georgia Lions Club, or one of the Athens, Georgia Lions Clubs, for the last 20 years, every time a Lions magazine comes out, they have Lions Club's members reading it to other Lions. And then they make it available online so that people who can't read, whether it's because of blindness or some other challenge, can hear the magazine, and not in a mechanical voice, which you can get from some other services. But in this case, they're able to get that from listening to a lion, reading to a lion. But how often do our people know about it? Hopefully, there's going to be an article in one of the upcoming Lions magazines to let people know. Because I think one of the biggest things we have with Knights of the Blind is to reach out to our own Lions members who are getting older. They're losing their vision. They're having difficulty reading. How many of our Lions step back and we don't see them because they don't feel they can fully participate? If we can let them know about the types of services like Lions Reading to Lions on the magazine, like the technology that will allow them to read, like different apps on a smartphone that are actually accessible for someone who's blind, they can continue to be a full and vibrant part of the Lions in spite of the vision loss that hits so many of our elderly Lions. If you haven't heard from the Knights of the Blind Committee and any of the clubs would like to hear from someone, please call Andy Arvidsson, who in his other role is the chair of that committee, and his number is 425-218-0190. And he'd be happy to connect Lions with members of Knights of the Blind. Thanks so much. And I really appreciate this whole seminar. I'm learning so much myself.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Collette. And I'm really glad you were able to make it. Thank you so much.
Oh, hi. This is Becky from South Everett, Danette's Club. And so I wanted to echo that appreciation for being invited. Knights of the Blind has just really enriched our club and raised awareness. And one of the things Danette did and Janet George was send out the MD19 article about White Cane Awareness Day that suggested going to get a proclamation from the mayor. So Danette and I did that, and I've got the proclamation right here.
Would you read that, Becky?
Okay.
Yeah.
City of Everett, Washington. Whereas the white cane, which every blind person of Everett, Washington has the right to carry, demonstrates and symbolizes the ability to achieve a full and independent life and the capacity to work productively in competitive employment. Whereas the white cane, by allowing every blind person to move freely and safely from place to place, makes it possible for the blind to fully participate in and contribute to our society and to live the lives they want. Whereas an individual using a guide dog independently through the city of Everett is recognized also as a guide for blind people. Whereas every citizen should be aware that the law requires that motorists and cyclists exercise appropriate caution when approaching a blind person carrying a white cane. Whereas Everett, Washington law also calls upon employers, both public and private, to be aware of and utilize the employment skills of our blind citizens by recognizing their worth as individuals and their productive capacity. Now, therefore, be it resolved that on this month of October 2021, I, Mayor Franklin, hereby proclaim October 15th, 2021 as White Cane Awareness Day and call upon residents to recognize and offer full opportunities for training to blind persons. And call upon employers and the public to utilize the available skills of competent blind persons and to open new opportunities for the blind in our rapidly changing society. And upon all citizens to recognize the white cane and guide dog as a tool of independence for blind pedestrians on our streets and highways. Therefore, I, Mayor Cassie Franklin, do hereby proclaim October 15th, 2021 as White Cane Awareness Day. Signed this 15th day of October, 2021.
Wow, that's
Great.
awesome.
Bravo, Franklin.
It was Becky that got this started. I from our line, South Everett Lines, she's the one that got this started, and her and I worked with Bernice, and that was awesome. Thank you so much.
That's great. We now have Sherry Richardson, who will share history of guide dog usage in America.
Hi, everybody. So guide dogs, I can speak a fair amount because I am involved with the Seeing Eye Incorporated in Morristown, New Jersey, and that was the original guide dog training. It was actually first located in Tennessee, and then they discovered the summers they were too hot for people and dogs to be out and about, which I totally agree with, having grown up in the South. Anyway, that was started in 1929. So they did move to New Jersey, I think, in 1930 or 31. It didn't take very long. Guide dog idea got started actually in Europe, and I believe it was World War I-ish. There were so many blind soldiers coming back from the war that Switzerland was the first place where people began working with soldiers, teaching them how to walk with, mostly at that time, shepherds that were trained to help with guiding. And then there was a very wealthy woman who was into dog breeding in the United States that heard about this program, and she's the one that brought it. She, in combination with the first man to receive a dog, were the ones that brought the program to the United States. So that's the history of guide dog use. I do remember in 1978 when I got my first dog that we were given a booklet of all the states that had laws on the books requiring guide dog being allowed to enter into public facilities. And I carried that book with me everywhere because, especially when I traveled, because then I could just, point to that page in that book and say, look, this is your law. So that was prior to ADA. And of course, with ADA, it's become national. And then that has been altered just a wee bit, but not that much for us. So anyway, that's all I can tell you.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sherry. That was really informative. Here now is Danette Dixon to talk about guide dogs of the blind.
Okay, so there's many guide dog schools, but I'm going to talk about the school that I've gone to 5 times. It's Guide Dogs for the Blind. They have 2 campuses in San Rafael, California, their larger campus, and their smaller campus in Boring, Oregon. No, it is not boring the 4 times I went there. And they have puppy raisers throughout many different states. So they're born right there at the kennel at Guide Dogs. They have a new building, a whelping kennel for the whelping mothers. And they stay at Guide Dogs till they're about 7 to 8 weeks, and then they go back to a puppy raiser's home till they're about 14 months, and 14 to about 19 or 20 months, or sometimes longer lately, they're in their formal training, which is where they learn the guide work. They start them off training by using and this looks totally funny, on a treadmill. That's how they get the dogs to pull in a harness on the treadmill, which looks totally funny. So they will learn like to stop it up and down curbs, go around objects, and they'll do intelligent obedience. That's what it's called. And then we get them when they're 19 or 20 months. We're in training with them for 2 weeks, and it's usually two students to one instructor. And then we'll take them home like probably 20 months. And that whole year, the first year that we have them, they're still in training until they get to know our area. And like, I have to know how to do it before my guide dog knows how to do it, because I have to teach him how to do it. But once he knows how to do it, well, I can forget it because he's going to know it. And they're usually a guide dog for about, I like to retire them like when they get 9, but that whole 7 to 8 years that I have them, we have like a field representative, Charles Nathan, that lives in Washington State, that if I have any problems, he's all over it. And we do have like vet support, like Mayor just had lymphoma removed and totally funded. Guide dogs totally paid for that, and they will give us like $250 a year for the wellness checkup, and then also do flea meds and heart guard. That's all part of what they do for graduates. And they have over 2,000 graduates from all over. And Guide Dogs for the Blind is all run by donations, and there's alumni services. Here in Washington State, we do have an alumni service who we have monthly meetings, which in other states, they have alumni services too, like Washington State. I'm the president of that. And they have they've just started a book club and a tech alumni chapter. And they have many different alumni chapters. And one that's last few years I've gotten started. It's for puppy raisers and handlers, and they and that's about all that I have about guide dogs. And if you have any questions, I'm more than willing to answer.
Thank you so much. Well, for this part of our community forum, I personally thought it would be awesome to share any stories that we may have for those who use white canes or guide dogs. Their stories could be good, bad, or funny, humorous, whatever you'd like to share to our stories. Personally, I went to the Orientation Training Center in 1990 and got my white cane training mobility. And while I was there, I don't know, I was dubbed by my mobility instructor as the what is that? You carry your cane, and she see me walking, crossing the street to head to classes, and I'd have it slingshot. I wasn't using it properly, so she always told me, "You're just slingshotting it across the street, and I don't want you doing that." And what she meant was I would carry my cane on the side of my hip with the cane in front of me, but more towards the side, and I just let it drag across the street as I was walking. I had enough vision to tell where I was going, but it was very blurred though, so I could see the white stripes of the sidewalk. So she said, "You got to stop slingshotting across the street." So I had many experiences using my white cane. Going to conventions, the Washington Council of Blind conventions. I've experienced twice in a row each year. My cane would fall to pieces right in my hands as I came out and to go wash my hands in front of the sink. I was going to take it and undo it so it could come down. Instead of coming down, it fell to pieces. So after the second year, I decided to bring a spare cane with me. But I was able to navigate and follow people because I could see them. They were a blur, but I could tell who it was by the clothing they wore. And that's how I was able to navigate at the conventions. But my vision has deteriorated even more. So I'm afraid of, if I go to in-person conventions, I will be sure to bring a spare cane with me. Anyway, I would like to open it up to anyone who'd like to tell any stories they might have.
This is Holly. Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is a way of how the white cane saved my bacon, but it's not in a way that you would think. Back in 1981, I lived in Washington, D.C., and I went to the Preakness over in Baltimore. And my friend and I were leaving the Preakness, and we were walking, and we lost our car, and we couldn't find it, and we ended up in a really horrible area of the city. And these two young thugs came out and said, "Give us your money." And I said, "Okay, no problem." And so I handed him my purse like a good girl. That's what my mother always told me to do. And my friend didn't. He knocked her cooler out of her hands, and then she ran down the street screaming after him and collapsed on the street. Anyway, it's a long story. So the next day, we got up in the morning, and my friend, my girlfriend called we got a phone call, and a guy said, "My name is whoever," and he said, is there a woman in your house that's blind? And she said, "Why do you want to know?" And he said, "Well, my son was just turned into the police because he stole her pocketbook, and inside of it was a white cane folded up and a card from the American Council of the Blind."
Wow.
So I just told my son I was going to have him arrested, because what kind of a lowlife would take a blind lady's pocketbook?
Wow.
I would like to tell a story about my guide dog. This is not my current guide dog. I'm going to tell a quick one about her too. In 2013, my husband and I moved out here from Washington, D.C. So I like to always say we went from the bad Washington to the good Washington. And in 2014, I was walking, and there was a street that I would cross the driveway to a shopping center, and I'm in Bellingham. And one day I was crossing, and my dog, Sarah Bell, turned and started walking up this hill to this shopping center. And I said, "No, Sarah, we're not going to go up here. We're not going to go see Miss Christina, who owned the bead shop where I used to go a lot of times and get beading stuff." So I said, "Let's just turn around and go back and start this over again." Well, I'm sitting there at the curb, and this woman pulls up next to me and starts crying. And I'm like, "Oh dear, what did I do?" And she said, I was almost hit you. I have one of those quiet electric cars, and you obviously didn't hear me, and I never even thought about it, but your dog took you up the hill, and your dog saved your life. You better go home and give her a big piece of steak or something." And I always have remembered that. And the other funny thing about conventions brought this into my mind. Our current dog, Pima, is I got her in 2016, and on November, I came home on October 30th, and November 4th, I went to the Washington Council of the Blind conference down in Seattle at SeaTac at the Marriott. And I'm going around, and my dog isn't upset. Sometimes dogs get concerned when there's a bunch of other dogs and they're in a hotel and it's a strange environment. And I'm like, oh, this dog is just hitting it with all 4 cylinders. She's an awesome dog. So I said that to her, called her puppy raiser, and I told her, and she said, well, she lived in a hotel for 3 months. She lived down in the LA area, and there were bad fires where they lived, and they lived in a hotel for 3 months. So she probably just thought she was going home. So let's see.
Well, I have a cane story and a guide dog story. My cane story is when my mom used to live at the Christian Healthcare Center, I'd go over there and visit her. So one time I had to use the restroom, and I'm always very careful when I stick my cane out. I don't stick it out very far, so people can trip over it. Anyway, I was just going to go out, and this lady trips over my cane, and she does end up falling. And of course I said I was sorry, but then one of the people that was working there said, no, we don't want you to walk with your cane here anymore, because if you want to go from one place to another, you got to ask for help. I said, are you kidding? And I've been walking around that place for quite a while already. So I just, even when I went there to visit my mom, I just kept walking until I got to her room, and I just didn't. Anyway, that was the only time that happened. So, and then my guide dog story is when I was in training at the school, I was crossing a street, and I was in the middle of the street, and a car comes chasing down, and the trainer that was behind me wanted to grab my shoulder, but my dog Harmon quick got me out of the way and saved me from getting hit by a car.
What a good boy.
Wow, good.
Anyway, I remember this from 1984 when I first started using white canes down in Seattle, and I'm not a city boy, but I like to walk fast, and I realized that if I'm walking too close to the curb in Seattle and cities that have parking meters, if I'm walking fast, and my cane doesn't always find a parking meter before my chest does.
Oh, no.
My mobility instructor used to every once in a while put his hand in front of my chest so I hit him instead of parking meters. And every once in a while I'd be too far ahead of him and go thump, and get my sternum run into a parking meter. And so that was always a fun, entertaining day when I do that. So I had to learn how not to walk too close to the curb.
Oh, yeah.
And so I had to learn to listen to the echo of the building and get closer to the buildings.
Yes.
But most people want you to walk on the right instead of the left. So so you try to walk, otherwise you're walking into people.
Yeah.
An interesting story about guide dogs is my first guide dog I got when I lived in Seattle. Then we moved to this wonderful town called LaConner, little town. And my dog was fast, and people in LaConner weren't used to guide dogs. So we'd walk through town because I worked at the other end of town. And people would tell my martial arts instructor, that's not a very well trained dog because it walks so fast. So anyway.
Good grief. Julie, go ahead.
You can hear me now? I just unmuted myself. Oh, good. I never know about my Zoom. I just was going to share with you an incident that the white cane law was not honored, and it was really the scariest thing that ever happened to me. I was working at an intersection in Seattle that was extremely busy. I don't know if any of you have ever been at Rainier and McClellan. So South Seattle, Rainier and McClellan. Just cars going in and out, very constant. And I had crossed, and I had the right of way to cross, but a car went through the red light and ran over my cane. And so
Oh.
the car ran over the cane, it flipped out of my hand, I lost my cane, and there were cars whooshing around me on every side. And I was standing in the middle of the street without a cane. Angels are around. And like a
Wow.
police officer happened to be driving by, and he got out and started directing traffic, and he came over to me and he goes, I can't believe you're not dead. But that was, praise the Lord that I didn't get hurt, but it was a
Wow.
horribly scary time. But what that told me was, or made me very aware of, I went back and looked at the white cane law. What a valuable law. That proved to me how essential it was. I
Oh,
almost didn't want
yes.
to cross the street again after, I mean, it took me a while to cross that intersection again.
Go ahead. Oh, go ahead, Linda. You're with us now?
But I have lots and lots of stories about me and my cane, but I just tell you a couple of really funny things. A long time ago in the late 70s, early 80s, I was dating another person who was blind, and we were all over town and restaurants and on buses and just having a great time. And we often would just stand by the curb near the bus sign, and we would, be kind of relaxed, holding our canes at an angle, just talking. And one day, this person who was very intoxicated, he stepped off the curb and he turned around and looked straight at us and says, "You two look just like a vaudeville act about to start." And we were just cracking up. Who would think, right? That's not what we had in mind, but it was pretty funny. Another time we were in Olympia at one of the state fairs, and we were trying to find a location of where we'd seen some food that we wanted to go back and try. And so my friend had more vision than me, and he saw a fella standing kind of close up, and the two of us walk up with our white canes and say, "Excuse me." And before we could even get our question out, he turned and he ran like his pants were on fire. It was just so funny. One time I was getting off the shuttle to go into the building where I worked for many years. And as I put my cane down on the sidewalk, the shuttle driver stepped on it and bent it into an L shape. So when I went into my office, there was quite a few comments, but at least since I worked for Services for the Blind, I had access to a different cane. And I think it was Yvonne. I can't even tell you, Yvonne, how many of my canes fell apart right when I was walking or just holding them. And I probably have 50 more stories, but
I got it. Well, since this is all about honoring our white canes, I didn't want to leave the session until I honored my cane. A couple of years ago, 3 years ago, I was going to the local supermarket here, which I do a lot, merrily walking along, and I think everything was fine, and I walked past the exit, and crunch, I felt something. My cane was ahead of me, of course, for about 2 feet, and a car ran over it, and sort of it was hanging in on it, and I rapped on the car to let them know that I was there, because I kind of walked right into the car. And this lady pulled over, and she was mortified, and she pulled out her wallet and started handing me money.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so she paid for the cane, but I was so happy I did not walk right into her car. I had one experience when somebody in a similar situation ran over my foot at the co-op.
wow.
Ouch.
It was amazing that it really didn't hurt my foot.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
I guess we have a lot of little bones in it, but I just wanted to mention that we love our canes.
Oh, yes. Yes, we do. I was walking to the supermarket as well. Shelley brought that up, and I just remember, is it Rite Aid or is it Pay and Save was next door to it, and I was passing that, and a lady jumped in front of me, and I thought, well, I better get around her. So I turned to my right, and she jumped that way, and I turned to my left to pass her again, and she jumped in front of me again, and she was pointing towards the store, and I looked up at her, but that's not where I want to go.
Oh, dear.
She was trying to corral me into the Pay and Save, and so when I finally said that, she moved back and let me go by, and I thought, who does that anyway? I felt like a calf trying to be corralled.
Well,
I appreciate you all. And in closing, are there any other comments from anyone?
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to tell you how much I appreciated Rock and I being here today, and the invitation to be a part of your meeting. I never, until I did some of the research for our little talk, I never realized that there was a White Cane Days in October that was basically for information to let people know about safety. And I didn't safety rules, and I didn't know that there were laws out there about white canes. So it's been really informative for me personally to realize. I just always grew up with respect for white canes because of my dad and because of the Lions. The Lions have been a part of my life forever, but I am appreciative now to know that there are actually laws that protect people with white canes, and that it's an important thing to educate others about that. So thanks for the opportunity to.
Well, I'm glad that you all were able to attend. Thank you all for joining us, especially our panelists who shared information for our forum. I really would like to acknowledge my committee for helping me put this together. We have Beth Marsaw on the committee, Bruce Racky, Holly and Jim Turry, and myself on the outreach committee. It started out as getting the word out to our community, and then it branched out to be a community forum. So I hope you enjoyed yourself in this community forum, and this brings it to an end.